confidence in their ability to teach students about our history, and in the process we can learn about one another and become a stronger nation. Thank you.
Still on track, that proposal?
Which would you talking about the priorities?
Yes.
Yeah, the priorities are still what they are. I think for us, the way we put it forward.
Welcome aboard, everybody. I am your Heavenly Father, Kevin Williams. This is a press conference with Jen Psaki right now. Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona, is addressing, very briefly addressed the question of have you somehow changed the education about Black history in schools, and are you concerned about the backlash from Fox News because they call it CRT, which is critical race theory? It's a completely different thing than they're teaching in the schools. This has been a lot of questions about COVID in the schools. Basically, Dr. Cardona has been saying, wear a mask. And he did say to the governors of Florida and Texas, hey, don't be the reason that we have to shut down the schools.
Allows districts and states to put in their proposals and how they want to teach it. But I think, again,
we're just wrapping up with Dr. Cardona here. Jen Psaki will be taking questions in a moment. Theoretically, this is what she usually does.
And it became a politicized issue that didn't need to, and it took us away from what I think is most important, our Build Back Better agenda and getting students safely back into school. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary.
All right. Thanks.
Always welcome to join us.
Thank you. All right. I'll get my mask on here.
Would you like to teach more science in school, Mr. Secretary?
Want to get into school safely? We could talk about the discussions there. And I'll be back for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're pro-science, just in case there was confusion. Okay. Couple of items for all of you at the top. Today, the President will announce a new set of actions aimed at advancing the goal of increasing the impact of his Build Back Better investments to address our climate crisis, positioning America to drive the electric vehicle future forward, outcompete China. He will sign an executive order, I know this was out there reported this morning, that sets an ambitious new target to make half of all new vehicles sold in 2030 zero emissions vehicles, including battery electric, plug-in hybrid electric, or fuel cell electric vehicles. In addition, later today, the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Transportation will announce how they are addressing the previous administration's harmful rollbacks of near-term fuel efficiency and emissions standard. A good question a lot of you have been asking is, what is the implementation about this? They will announce the rulemaking, next steps in rulemaking process later today as well. These new actions, paired with the investments in the President's Build Back Better agenda, will strengthen American leadership in clean cars and trucks by accelerating innovation and manufacturing in the auto sector, bolstering the auto sector domestic supply chain, and growing auto jobs and good pay and benefits. We are also announcing today the Biden administration commitment we are committing more than $3.46 billion in new funding to help states and partners increase resilience and reduce the impacts of climate change nationwide. At a time when communities across the country are facing the impacts of the climate change crisis and grappling with extreme heat, wildfires, prolonged droughts, the onset of peak hurricane season, this historic addition of the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program will help states, localities, tribal and territorial governments finance projects to safeguard our communities for the future. FEMA Administrator Criswell is currently briefing the National Governors Association, Homeland Security Advisors Council on these investments, and we will have a fact sheet after the briefing detailing how much funding each state and locality will be receiving. Also wanted to note that today, senior White House officials, including Ambassador Susan Rice, Dana Remus, and Julie Rodriguez, will host a virtual convening with 8 state attorneys general as part of the President's ongoing strategy to combat the surge in gun crime we've seen over the last 18 months. During the meeting, the group will discuss policies and strategies to hold gun manufacturers and dealers accountable for wrongful conduct that contributes to guns making their way into the hands of criminals. And
that's a huge change, by the way. Right now, gun manufacturers are basically immune from prosecution or being sued for defaults or not defaults, for faults in the manufacturing process, etc. And that was a law pushed by the NRA and a lot of gun manufacturing donors. By the way, the gun manufacturers are what pay the NRA, which is also bankrupt because of completely corrupt organization. Moving on.
Used in shootings around the country. We are committed to using every tool at our disposal to crack down on gun crime. That includes money to put more cops on the beat and support community anti-violence programs.
What? But I thought you guys wanted to defund the police officers that you've never been for. The defunding part. That a few wackos have been marching around with signs saying defund the police, but that the Democratic Party itself has never been for defunding the police. And now you want more police officers? Make up your mind. Are you pro police officers or are you pro police officers?
It also means aggressive steps to stem the flow of guns used in crimes. And in addition to today's convening, we also announced today tough new regulations on untraceable ghost guns, and we also launched 5 regional gun trafficking strike forces, as you all know, and announced a national zero tolerance policy for gun dealers.
But when are you going to do something about gun violence? Huh?
Last item for all of you, as you all know, the president has
The Democrats are just ignoring the crime wave, I guess, by passing legislation and making differences.
been committed to the federal judiciary for decades, having served as the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's made it a chief priority to nominate deeply qualified nominees who are devoted to the rule of law and who represent the diversity of the country. He's done that at a historic pace. And his nominees are also being confirmed with unprecedented speed. Today, he nominated 3 additional candidates for the federal judiciary. Among them, Justice Beth Robinson, Vermont's first openly LGBTQ Supreme Court justice, who would also be the
Okay, great, but that really shouldn't matter. But okay, great.
first openly LGBTQ woman to serve on any federal circuit court. Under the president's leadership, we've also confirmed the most African American women as federal circuit judges of any single presidential term in American history, and the first Muslim.
Already, by the way. This is, 6 months into the administration, and there are already the most African American female judges confirmed. Might be nominated. She might have said nominated.
Muslim Article 3
Trump had 4 years. 4 years.
judge in American history.
And a Senate that was completely biased towards confirming anybody he put up, even if they didn't have a law degree as a judge.
He's also chosen nominees from a wide variety of backgrounds, prosecutors, and also public defenders.
Multiple times, the American Bar Association said, we cannot recommend this individual to be a judge, a federal judge. This is a terrible idea. And the Senate just passed it through anyway because Republicans.
Law firm lawyers, and civil rights attorneys. That will continue to drive his decisions moving forward. Amr, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. 2 questions. So, first I wanted to ask about thing related to yesterday, which the importance of continuing to work with New York as the situation with Governor Cuomo is playing out. With that said, it's a critical time for the state and the country with the surge of the Delta variant. Will the president pick up the phone and personally insist to the governor that for the good of the state, it's time to step down?
I don't know that Joe Biden picking up the phone and calling Mario Cuomo will make any difference whatsoever to anybody. And why should he? New York, that's a state situation. They'll handle it themselves. Cuomo's going to resign eventually. I don't know why politicians do this. This is too much, right? This might be criminal behavior. Now, Governor Northam, there was a blackface controversy a couple of years ago in Virginia, and he stuck it out, and everything is just fine. Everyone's moved on from that. And in surveys at the time, Democrats were like, you got to resign, except that black Democrats in Virginia were completely against him resigning. It's like, yeah, he had blackface on with Michael Jackson 20 years ago or whatever. Really not that important compared to making sure the policies that he's about now get passed into law.
The president's address.
Not defending blackface. I'm just saying Cuomo is done. And thank God. Nobody supports Cuomo. Nobody.
This, and I have no planned calls to preview or predict for you.
We all thought, hey, this is a pretty good guy. Now we find out he's not a good guy. You know, it would be like discovering Hitler. I really like that painting you've done there, Adolf. Nice work on that. Wait, you're doing what with the Jews? I will not purchase that painting. Things change and we adapt. The difference being with the Republicans is that when things change, and hey, that Brett Kavanaugh guy did a lot of bad things, according to all of these different women. It's like, well, we're going to have an FBI investigation where they're not allowed to investigate, and then we're going to pass them through anyway.
I also have a question EV related. Infrastructure bill, if I understand.
Why? Why? Because it's all about the win for Trump. By the way, Laura Ingraham just came out the other day, it was 3 days ago now, on her show and admitted the quiet part out loud. That it's not about the American people. It's not about what's good for America. It's not about America first. It's about making sure Biden doesn't get a win. And we'll talk about that interview later. She just got owned. Laura Ingraham just has turned into a pathetic mush this last week. I haven't watched every episode, but Bill Cassidy just schooled her on how the processes work and would not say what she wanted him to say. And she just, every time she talks about it now, she gets completely flustered because she knows she got spanked.
Right, includes about half
That's metaphorical. Do not visualize that.
of what the president wanted in order to build a national network of charging stations. So how do you take EVs from the niche, or merging from the niche to the mainstream without that necessary investment in charging stations?
Well, first I would say it's a historic investment in EV charging stations, and we also know that also as part of the investment is efforts to reduce the cost of purchasing electric vehicles. So I would say the president's commitment.
Yay! I know, like a couple of you. I think producer Joanna, is she even in here? She was thinking about buying a Tesla. Hold on. I have an older vehicle myself, a 2002 Ford Focus, which is driven now by Kevin Lee Daughter. I have a hydrogen vehicle myself. If you live in California, get yourself a hydrogen car. It's a free vehicle. It's amazing. And you're putting out water. That's your byproduct. H2O. Hydrogen and oxygen, fuel cell technology. Literally, my car pees on the road, but it's just water. It's not even urine. So if you're looking for a great deal on a car in California, you're in luck with hydrogen. That should be on the billboards. You're welcome, Toyota.
Commitment to making electric vehicles the vehicle of the future, further incentivizing the direction of the industry, which is already where it's headed, making us more competitive as it relates to China, is reflected both in the bill and the bill that's working its way through the Senate, also in announcements like the one that was made today about that show clear initiative and commitment from this administration to make electric vehicles central to our focus moving forward.
I apologize.
Moving forward, because they're vehicles. She's pretty punny.
On the Governor Cuomo, you don't have calls to read out, but has there been a call?
No. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, right now Cuomo is so toxic. Don't get involved. Do not get involved. Because what happens if Biden makes that call and says you better resign? No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. All right? There's a no win there. Do not touch that. Right now, Cuomo is the third rail. And right now he's running his finger down that third rail and saying, hey there.
Questions for you. Has the president received a formal recommendation yet from the Secretary of Defense to mandate vaccines for the military? And if so, does the president intend to accept that recommendation and sign a waiver authorizing that mandate?
Sure. Well, the president announced last week that he was asking the Secretary of Defense and the Defense Department to look into how and when they will add COVID to the list of mandatory vaccinations for our armed forces. We expect a determination soon. I'm not going to get ahead of that, and certainly he's going to rely on the recommendation of his Secretary of Defense.
Thank you. Also, on the COVID front, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is now fundraising off of President Biden's comments for him to, quote, get out of the way of people trying to help battle the COVID surge in that state. DeSantis has said, I'm standing in your way, I'm not going anywhere, and referred to the president as a power-hungry tyrant. What is your response to the governor and the administration's response to the governor? And is the president considering reaching out to DeSantis to talk this over?
Well, first, from day one, we've approached this not as a political issue, but a public health issue. We remain in touch with officials in Florida, just like we're in touch with officials from around the country about how we can provide assistance from the federal level to help address this public health crisis. What I have cited and what the president has cited is...
Just a quick note of personal privilege here. I did ask Jen yesterday in an email to wear something as closely approximating the salmon color that comes through the wall and the artwork behind me. Right. Well, you can see it. And I think she's done a nice job with that muted rose that she's wearing today. So thank you. Nice work with the blazer, Jen. Judges agree.
Publicly available data about public health and the impact in Florida. It is factual and it is a fact and data that you all are aware of, that 25% of hospitalizations in the country are in Florida. It is also a fact.
So one quarter of all the hospitalizations in the country, Florida. Now, part of that is that is where the Delta variant took hold very quickly. And that will spread throughout the country, hopefully not as much. Part of that is due to that. But 98% is just due to DeSantis.
That the governor
Those are facts. And we like to deal with the facts. Those are facts. We're all about facts.
has taken steps that are counter to public health recommendations. So we're here to state the facts. Frankly, our view
See, like I just said.
is that this is too serious, deadly serious, to be doing partisan name calling. That's what we're not doing here. We're focused on providing public health data, information to the people of Florida to make sure they understand.
Yeah, don't call DeSantis names. I did it. I went right through it. See, practice.
What steps they should be taking, even if those are not steps taken at the top of the leadership in that state. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Republicans have made it pretty clear over the last couple of days that they're drawing a red line on the debt ceiling in terms of their willingness to negotiate.
Everybody right now, we're in bed with Caroline, so behave yourself.
To consider a clean debt ceiling increase. Does the president want Democrats to move that through reconciliation, or is she ready to have that fight at some point in September or October with Republicans, trying to get Republican support?
The president believes that Democrats and Republicans should move forward, as they did 3 times during the last administration, to raise the debt ceiling.
Does anybody want to talk about the debt ceiling? We can if we want to, but I think we're all pretty familiar with the debt ceiling. Can we talk about the debt ceiling, please? Specifically with DeSantis? I'm just nailing it today.
Something that they did, even in the wake
But we don't have to talk about it. We can move on.
of the former president putting in place a $2 trillion tax cut that certainly did not do anything to reduce the deficit. So that's his view.
Increase the deficit to $1 trillion.
He believes they should move forward and do that. That's the responsible step for our country.
And then one more on a very different subject. Does the president have a deadline in his mind in terms of when his patience would run out on the Iran negotiations?
Look, I think the president's view is that it is in our interest to continue to pursue a diplomatic path forward. Because even though we certainly don't approve, in fact, we have great concern about a number of Iran's problematic activities in the global community, having visibility into their nuclear capabilities and capacities is in our national interest. The timeline is not endless, and I know the Secretary of State has conveyed that clearly. But right now, we are open to returning to a 7th round of negotiations. The inauguration is today, so we will see what happens from here. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jen, the president today offered safe haven to Hong Kong residents who are living in the United States for 18 months. I'm wondering why 18 months? Is that something he'd be willing to extend? And is citizenship on the table for those people as well?
Well, the announcement that we made today, I know you're closely following this, but for others who have not followed this closely, is in reaction to the steps that have been taken by the PRC to crack down on human rights and frankly make it a place where Hong Kong's autonomy and the freedoms of people in Hong Kong are undermined. In terms of what could happen 18 months from now, I'm certainly not going to get ahead of that. Obviously, our hope and our objective and our work on the international forum is to change the behavior that is happening and the oppression that we're seeing of the people in Hong Kong. But certainly, this step is one that
yeah, so I see in the chat room they're talking about what is Devin Nunes doing with suing Rachel Maddow. Well, Devin Nunes first sued a pretend cow on Twitter and lost. Now he's suing Rachel Maddow, saying that Rachel Maddow defamed him. Coincidentally, I want to use this opportunity to announce that I am also suing Rachel Maddow, not for defaming anyone, but for leaving us for 2 weeks of a personal vacation in the middle of the summer. I like me some ally. Sorry, I swear to God, I wasn't going to do this. I like me some Ali Velshi, or as Trump said, Ali Belcher, who works for CNN and got shot with tear gas, none of which is true, or his name. I love me some Ali Velshi, and I'd sit down, have a beer with Ali Velshi, and I hate beer. But I'm sorry, anybody who starts off the broadcast, good evening, Rachel Maddow is on a much deserved vacation. No! I hate that person. Talk about the bearer of bad news. Anyway, so I'm suing.
Is meant to ensure we are practicing what we preach in terms of human rights values and ensuring that people who are in this country don't face the ongoing repression that we're seeing in Hong Kong.
And one more related to China. China says it has supplied over 770 million vaccine doses to other countries. President Biden often says that the amount of vaccines that the U.S. has shared is more than the rest of the world combined. President Xi today also said they're planning to donate $2 billion this year. Just wondering if you question China's math and/or whether
always question Chinese math. But yes, the Chinese have given out a whole bunch of their vaccine, which is not that effective in real world situations, but better than nothing. Now, China wants to control Africa. China has been working in Africa because they want the minerals out of Africa. It's smart. This is all part of the Silken Belt and Brick and Chartreuse initiative that China's doing. We are behind in Africa, and China is gobbling up the world's resources. They're doing a great job at it, and we got to get behind that. Yes, we should be giving vaccines. By the way, the Delta variant, it came out of India, as far as we know. Didn't come out of the States. We can vaccinate everybody in the States. It's not going to prevent a modification of the virus, a variant, if you will, or a new virus, I would hope you will, from being developed somewhere else on the planet through a mutation, somebody who's not vaccinated, or somebody even worse who's vaccinated, and you end up with a superbug. And that superbug will find its way back to the United States. That's how the world works now.
the U.S. is planning to give more than the president has already said.
This is just the beginning, and we certainly plan to give more. We want to be the arsenal for vaccines in the global community. I would note, and then I'll come back to the numbers, that we provide vaccines to the world without strings attached. We want to provide them from a humanitarian standpoint because we think it is morally right, because we want to be a leader in the world on issues ranging from human rights to ensuring we're addressing the global pandemic. I'm not sure that's exactly the same approach that China is taking. In fact, it is not. But I would say that in terms of their numbers, it is not just
Wait, Caroline, where are you that you haven't had the vaccine yet?
us citing this. I believe the numbers we've cited, or the numbers he cited the other day, were from international experts who've looked at donations. I don't have data to confirm in terms of the numbers that China has contributed to the global community. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. The automakers that are appearing with the president today at this big announcement also lobbied the Trump administration to roll back emissions standards that were set by the Obama administration. So what gives this White House confidence that they are actually going to reach for this ambitious new goal, especially given the fact that the executive order is not binding?
Well, first I would say they're standing with the president today while he's making this announcement. That is certainly significant.
I think she's in Australia, but we're going to let her answer that herself. And she's in bed right now, which makes sense because in Australia, it's Christmas Eve every night. So that's going to be exciting. Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm that before we went on. She is down under, and so Australia has all three of their major cities pretty locked down right now because of the Delta variant. The Delta variant is still spreading. That being said, they locked down Sydney after 7 cases. Why? Because they're smart. But there is a grave concern that you could end up with a second recession if you shut down your 3 major cities. However, they tend to shut things down. For example, around the Australian Open, which is a tennis tournament that takes place in Melbourne, they shut down for a few days. They figure out when the disease stops spreading, and they open back up again. But while they shut down, You go out for groceries. That's about it. You go to and from work. You're permitted a certain amount of exercise per day. Caroline can fill you in with more details, but she's also going to sleep. So you have to have a required amount of sleep per day, I understand, under the lockdown as well. But yeah, the problem in Australia is they haven't done the vaccine rollout as well as they can. There's obviously there's dozens of people in Australia that would get vaccinated. Total population of Australia is about 180. So when 7 people get the Delta variant, that's a big deal.
And
we got 150 prisoners and then roughly 35 people to act as wardens, etc., prison staff at the prison.
We've also seen a lot of these industries move in the direction of electric vehicles. That's not just the president saying that. That is the direction where a lot of these industries are moving. One of the things the president's going to talk about this afternoon is the fact that we need to address also supplies like batteries, which right now China is producing about 80% of batteries that are required for that industry to succeed. But I also would note that in addition to the announcement today, and I noted this a little bit at the top, there will be rulemaking steps that are announced by the appropriate agencies later this afternoon to ensure that we can move forward and make these pronouncements a reality.
And the founder of Tesla, Elon Musk, expressed surprise that he was not invited to this ceremony because his company is obviously such a large manufacturer of electric vehicles. Can you give us any insight into why Tesla wasn't included in this event?
Well, we, of course, welcome the efforts of all automakers who recognize the potential of an electric vehicle future and support efforts that will help reach the president's goal. And certainly, Tesla is one of those companies. Today, it's the 3 largest employers of the United Auto Workers and the UAW president who will stand with President Biden as he announces his ambitious new target. But I would not expect this is the last time we talk about clean cars, the move toward electric vehicles, and we look forward to having a range of partners in that effort.
So it's not because Tesla is a non-union shop?
Well, these are the 3 largest employers of the United Auto Workers. So I'll let you draw your own conclusion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Democratic.
Okay. Plus, Elon's kind of a loose cannon, so maybe not have him up on stage, because if Elon was up on stage when they announced, hey, we're going to try and go like really, really electric, like half of all vehicles, he'd be jumping in there and be like, yeah, all of our vehicles are electric. We led the way. We're the best. We're not so expensive when you consider that there's a lot of millionaires in the United States, and buy Bitcoin.
Congresswoman Cori Bush is saying that she favors.
And plus, Elon killed people during COVID. He opened up his factory in Northern California when California said, no, don't open your factory. He did it anyway, and then his workers died. So, man, I love me a Tesla, but I'm not buying one anytime soon.
Spending tens of thousands on private security to keep her safe, and that people should, quote, suck it up, defunding the police has to happen.
Wait. Hold on. Here's the deucers. This is Peter Ducey from Fox News. He's asking a question about defunding the police. I wasn't paying attention to the bit, so we're going to go back. This is like the first time I've tuned out today because I have my own thoughts occasionally. I get 3 of them a day, and my first one happened, and we're going to go back and listen to. By the way, I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but here at Pembroke Studios, they still have a landline. I'm like, what is that noise? What's happening? Call from 946. Here we go.
Security to keep her safe.
No.
In shop?
Well, these are the 3 largest employers of the United Auto Workers. So I'll let you draw your own conclusion.
It's just like a mom with a kid asking, like, Mommy, why are people mean? Well,
go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Democratic Congresswoman Cori.
Arm the trebuchet. Actually, it's a trebuchet for Marcy. I don't want to get nitpicky, but it's a different. Judges agree. It's a trebuchet.
Bush is saying that she favors spending tens of thousands.
Oh, this is Cori Bush. Okay, so this is a wacko. Oh, she's not a wacko. She's a wacko.
It's on private security to keep Congresswoman Cori Bush.
Auto workers. So I'll let you draw your own conclusion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush is saying that she favors spending tens of thousands on private security to keep her safe, and that people should, quote, suck it up, defunding the police has to happen. Didn't President Biden say a few weeks ago that anybody who accuses the party of being anti-police is lying?
Well, I think we shouldn't lose the forest through the tree.
Okay, so Cori Bush is not the party. You understand? She's an individual.
here, which is that a member of Congress, an elected official, is concerned that her life is threatened, and that's disturbing, that any elected official would have to suffer death threats and fear for their life. So I'm not going to comment, of course, on their security arrangements. I don't have any more details on that, but I think we should start with that point first. I will say that the president has been crystal clear that he opposes defunding the police. He has said that throughout his campaign for office. His record over the last
That is true. He has many times, including in the debates. And for some reason, Republicans they just completely ignore that. Because Biden doesn't know what he's talking about, because he's not in his right mind, because he's not cognizant.
last several decades has made that clear. He has proposed increased funding for law enforcement and the COPS program, increased funding from his predecessor, who was, as you might note or be aware of, a Republican. So I'd note that his record is pretty clear on this. There may be some in the Democratic Party, including Congresswoman Bush, who disagree with him. That's okay. But I would say the majority of Democrats, we've seen this in polling, and the majority of members also agree that we should not defund the police.
Is there a greater concern, though? I understand that's not the president's position, but is there a concern that defunding the police or suck it up, defunding the police has to happen might become a big Democratic message ahead of the midterms?
It does not appear to become.
Oh, only on the right-wing news outlets like yours, Peter. Let me make this clear. That is one person's opinion. The Democratic Party is not for defunding the police, okay? That's one person.
Becoming a Democratic message, even though there might be a desire for that on the other side of the aisle.
Okay,
Yes.
and then there are reports the administration wants to require all foreign visitors to be vaccinated. Would that include migrants arriving in Texas and Arizona and being released into border towns?
Well, I know there were a range of reports about this, so let me just give you a little bit of an update on this.
Yes.
One moment. And I know you asked kind of two questions there, and I promise I'll address them both.
Oh.
Let me reiterate, and I know Francesca asked a question about this the other day, the importance of international travel. Given where we are today with the Delta variant, we will plan to maintain existing travel restrictions at this point. However, what our interagency working groups are focused on, and this is, I think, what was reported, is...
We'll have to see what happens here. But so far, the White House has been absolutely terrible with their messaging on the border. I've yet to see a single Democrat lay out exactly what happens in step by step, making it really easy for the idiots on the other side to understand. People are trying to get into the country. That's what always happens. If they are symptomatic, they are tested by Customs and Border Patrol. If they are not with a child or they are not a child, they are immediately expelled back into Mexico under Title 42. For a while, since Biden took office, the Republicans have been saying that he's going to end Title 42, which is during a pandemic, you're not allowed to come into the country because you might be carrying the disease. So there is no immigration. There's no illegal immigration. There's no asylum claims from coming in from the Mexican border unless you have a child with you or you are a child. See, and then as soon as they're released from CBP, everybody gets tested by HHS or the authority that they're released to. For example, in McAllen, Texas, they are released to a local authority and immediately tested whether or not they're symptomatic. No one is just going, oh yeah, come on in and you're out of here. So it looks like we're buffering a little bit, and we're hardwired. There's nothing I can do about it right now. That's just a problem on Spectrum's side.
Working to develop a plan for a consistent and safe international travel policy. And that will be done through the prism of providing consistent guidance, equitable guidance, digestible guidance. And there's a lot of confusion about what the restrictions are now. And you all have asked a lot of good questions about it because it feels inconsistent, and it is. But that's what our focus is. So that is certainly under strong consideration, but it is under a policy process review right now that I won't get ahead of myself. As it relates to, I know there was also reporting about the vaccination of migrants. That's not what the CBP is doing. There are NGOs and other international organizations who are vaccinating migrants as they come across the border and as they work in partnership with us. Certainly that helps keep a range of people safe in the country.
But do you think that it's keeping people safe in McAllen, Texas, where 7,000 confirmed COVID?
Oh, okay. This is where you need to know exactly what's happening in McClellan, Texas, and you need to be able to answer this very, very succinctly.
Positive migrants have been released into the city since February. 1,500 in the last 7 days.
Well, I think it's important to note what's actually happening in McAllen.
Yes,
So
yes.
there's actually been, they signed a disaster declaration and approved setting up a temporary emergency shelter to provide a space, to create an isolated space to mitigate this issue. And what happens is DHS, and this is the process of what happens, the agency, one, we're continuing to enforce Title 42.
So, Department of Homeland Security, they're the umbrella of all these different agencies, including Customs and Border Patrol, including ICE, Immigration, Customs. So, all of these different agencies, HHS, they fall under, HHS might not be under DHS. DHS was created after 9/11 to sort of bring all the agencies together. So I'd have to look at the tree to see if that doesn't matter. Anyway, CBP processes them. Okay, so Customs and Border Patrol, you come across Title 42, you're out of here. Okay. Oh, you're an unaccompanied child. You're a kid. Okay, we will take care of you because we're America. Oh, you're a family with kids. You get to come in, not all the time, especially if you've been kicked out before. We will process your asylum claim. If you have a legitimate asylum claim, you'll be allowed to stay in the United States, but we will set you up and we'll take care of you for now because you have a child with you. Okay. That being said, in June, 5,000 families were rejected. Sorry, not 5,000 families, 5,000 individuals that were part of families with children, etc. If a claim couldn't be established legitimately by Customs and Border Patrol, Title 42, they're back in Mexico. Okay, not in a holding facility. They're just rejected out of the border. Yeah, okay. So then we go back to Jen here because she's going to tell us exactly what happened. The word is in McClellan, Texas, what I was watching on Fox yesterday and what Ted Cruz was saying, I believe on Hannity when I was watching, is that the Customs and Border Patrol know these people are COVID positive and they're just dropping them off in downtown McClellan. Let's see what actually is happening.
Resulting first in the agency, one, we're continuing to enforce Title 42, resulting first in the expulsion of the vast majority of those encountered at the border.
Yeah. So out of about 140,000 people who actually came across the border in June, we don't have the figures for July yet that I know of. In June, about 145,000 people came across. There were 200,000 encounters, but a lot of those are the same people trying to come across again. But out of those 145,000, 105,000 of those encounters resulted in the use of Title 42, which was immediately, oh, you don't have a kid, get out. The border is closed. No one is saying is the border is open, come on in, except the Republicans, which is such batshit nonsense. They're endangering children, families, etc. But you know what? They're Republicans, so what do they care?
We also, CBP also provides migrants who can't be expelled under Title 42 with PPE. They're required to wear the PPE. If any exhibit signs of illness in CBP custody, they're referred to local health systems for appropriate testing, diagnosis, isolation, and treatment. And obviously there are steps taken as needed, as this is certainly evidence of. I think we got to keep chugging here just because I don't want to run out.
No, this is so important. This is all they're talking about in the right wing. Is the border. This is what DeSantis attacked Trump or Biden with yesterday. Address this fully now, please. It's so easy.
Time. Kelly, go ahead.
With the eviction moratorium.
Oh my God. Okay, so the talking point right now is 7,000 COVID positive patients. They're not patients. COVID positive immigrants, illegals on the right, have been released into this tiny town in Texas, which is right on the border, right when you first get up into Texas. That's the first county, Hidalgo County. That's where McClellan is. And so 1,500 COVID positive people, illegals, released into McClellan, just dumped off and then put on buses and spread around the nation and flown at taxpayer expense, where we take care of their education, their welfare, their food, their housing, their cars, their cell phone. Address it. It can be so easily knocked down. Just address it. It's the elephant. It's the illegal elephant in the room.
And landlords groups are already bringing legal action, and the courts are requiring some steps of respondents by tomorrow and so forth. Given that, is the president still confident that the CDC's action is within the law?
Yes, and he would not have moved forward if not. We can't control.
It is legal. It is constitutional for now, but when it gets to the Supreme Court, it will be struck down. Kavanaugh will flip. He was the 5 in the 5-4 decision to keep the mandate, not the mandate, the moratorium on evictions. He was the 5. He will flip, as he explained. The only reason that he didn't rule against the moratorium back in July was because it was ending at the end of July anyway, and he didn't want to disrupt the process. If it comes back to the Supreme Court, which probably will happen, they will rule against it, and then the CDC will be powerless, blah, blah, blah. It is the legislature's job to put a moratorium on evictions. Everybody at the Supreme Court said that. They all agree on that. Hey, come on, Congress, do your job. The trouble is that all of the Republicans in Congress are like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not, screw the people. And you can't take care of it through reconciliation because it's not a budget process. It's a health issue. So, in other words, you got to get 60 senators to sign on board to this, and they don't have it.
Of course, what the courts do, we certainly understand that. Separate branches of government, but also they'll make their own decisions. But what we can control and what we are very focused on is what we can do in states and what we can do to push this funding and money out. And, as we've been talking about quite a bit in here, there was an incredible amount of activism, of calls for an extension of the eviction moratorium by a range of members of Congress. We talked about Congresswoman Bush in a different capacity. She's certainly one of them, and many others joined her in this effort. And what we are hopeful now is that we can all take that activism, those calls for an extension, those calls for providing relief to renters, and take them to states and pressure states and leaders to get this money out easier. I'd also note
it's a Waffle House Express, Chris.
What was interesting I saw this morning is that Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer, both in a moment of bipartisan agreement, agreed states need to do a better job. So that's what we can control. That's where our focus is. We can't control the courts.
She's talking about the money to help renters pay landlords. So roughly $56 billion, could be $59 billion, whatever it is, was designated as the COVID rescue bill that every Republican voted against. We're going to give the renters money to pay the landlords back pay so that they don't get evicted. Because you don't want 9 million homeless families all of a sudden on the American streets. Turns out the Republicans are very pro homelessness for families.
Obviously, we're not going to speak to ongoing litigation.
As you support private sector businesses around the country and other kinds of institutions that are setting requirements for vaccines and so forth, what guidance are you offering for how small businesses police that? If you're in a restaurant situation where you have wait staff or proprietors who would be challenging their own customers, what guidance does the federal government have for how this should be measured?
You mean vaccine verification and how it's approached? One, we do support efforts to incentivize workforces, of course, to protect their workforces and get more people vaccinated. We want to ensure that it's done in a transparent way, that it's done in an equitable way, that if there are verification requirements, it can be done digitally. There are a range of ways to provide the information.
So nothing, basically, is what you're saying, nothing.
Basic guidelines along those lines that we have conveyed, and we will continue to convey as people have questions. And we understand different localities and communities will apply any verification measures in different ways. Go ahead, Steve.
Jen, just to follow up
So nothing. Okay, cool.
on the international travel question, I understand that there's an interagency process, but is it the goal of that process to end in a vaccine mandate for people who are flying to the U.S.?
Well, that's one of the considerations, but the process has not been concluded yet. And what I was trying to note at the beginning is that right now, I think, which is why a lot of you have very good questions about this, there isn't consistency, right? And there are good questions about why, when this country has larger rates of vaccination, et cetera. What we want to create or determine through this process is a way to provide clear, digestible guidance that also has our public health front and center. So that's a consideration, but it has not concluded yet.
I know that it's early, and the president earlier today expressed his sadness on the passing of Richard Trumka. Are you aware of any plans or intention on the president's part to attend any kind of memorial service or funeral?
That's a good question, and I think as you all saw and noted, Richard Trumka was someone who the president considered a friend. He considered an ally in the fight for worker rights, for collective bargaining, and I think as you all have seen who have covered the president or followed him long before he became president, this is probably a passion of his that he shared quite deeply. This is a passion of his he shared quite deeply with Richard Trumka. I don't know that there have been any plans announced yet. Certainly the president will be interested in those once they become available. Go ahead.
Richard Trumka was a big union head, just passed away, apparently. That's the first I've heard of it, too.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask first about the talks that have been going on with Senator Cornyn
Sure.
on the Hill related to the infrastructure bill. He's offering an amendment that would allow using some of the rescue plan money for infrastructure. And so I'm wondering if you have kind of an update on, I know the White House started engaging those talks last night. So can you move
This useless question, but we'll just skip forward.
Toward an agreement on this, that any agreement on this front will
Okay, so second question.
into account front and center.
It's not a useless question, but we're not going to get any information out of that. It's the infrastructure bill is being negotiated right now. We saw them last time we broadcast an hour ago. We saw them going through the amendment process where I was going to say Bitch McConnell, but it wasn't him. It was Chuck Astley suggested an absence of a quorum, which then created a roll call situation, which just slows everything down. This will happen over and over and over again because there are a bunch of Republicans that just want to slow this down until the August research. It's stupid because Chuck Schumer could just say, okay, we're not going anywhere until we get this done. Everybody cancel your vacation plans. It's counterintuitive for the Republicans, but it's all about grandstanding.
And after what we saw with the eviction moratorium and the concerns of the president, and you have expressed about Delta particularly hitting them, I'm wondering, we heard from the White House about expanded unemployment benefits. Those are set to expire in September. Has there been any sort of thought or revision about the White House asking Congress to extend those unemployment benefits beyond September?
Mm-hmm. There has not been a change at this point in time. Obviously, we're quite focused, and we designed the American Rescue Plan with the goal of being able to plan for contingencies, including rises in moments of the virus, economic needs, different communities recovering at different rates. That's one of the reasons why we push for state and local funding, why the child tax credit will benefit people through the course of next year, why there are also additional funding.
By the way, there are 90 million American children receiving $250 or $300 a week. The parents get the money. If you got two kids in your family, you're getting at least $500. Nobody's talking about this. Oh, bread costs 38 cents more. Yeah, but you're getting $500 with which to buy that bread. Why is this not the lead story? Why are we not seeing family after family talking about what they are going to do with that money? With that extra money to help to basically end child poverty. Biden ended child poverty as we know it in this country, and you never hear a word about it. I don't know how you can think that the lamestream media is in the pocket of the Democrats if nobody's talking about that. Why? Because it's not horrible.
Funding that people can have access to in their communities through small business loans as well, but there hasn't been any change to that at this point.
And one last quick one to follow on Phil's question about the debt ceiling. Senate Democrats have been talking about attaching it to the CR. Mitch McConnell earlier today indicated that Republicans didn't want to support this, but the result of this is if Democrats throw it onto the CR, there could be a government shutdown in a couple months. And so,
yeah, the Republicans will try and get a government shutdown when the debt ceiling expires. They're just trying to hurt Biden. It's not about the American people at all anymore. Why? Because that's the playbook that they've used in the past, and it seemed to work. So they're going to do it again, just like Trump said, oh, how did we get Hillary? Oh, well, the investigation. The FBI investigation into Hillary right before the election, that's what got Trump the win. And, I mean, that's completely believable. So what do you do in order to beat Biden? you try and get Ukraine to announce an investigation, not even to do an investigation, just to announce an investigation. It's the same playbook. It's the opposite of insanity, but at the same time, it's insanity. By the way, the definition of insanity is not to repeat the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's called practice.
So I'm wondering if that is a concern, if the White House has any sort of preference for how they want Congress. Obviously, I know you want Congress to raise the debt ceiling, but any preference on how they do it? And are you at all concerned or preparing for the possibility of a government shutdown?
Again, these are all speculation questions, so we're just going to skip by that because what are you going to do with the debt ceiling? Well, we're going to hope to extend it. Well, are you going to use a clean resolution? No, we're just going to.
Because international travel has come up multiple times today.
Sure.
During the health briefing, it was talked about how vaccination requirements for foreign travelers are under consideration, but there were also other alternative pathways that were mentioned. Could you tell us a little bit more about those alternative pathways that are under discussion? And
she should do voiceovers for cartoons. She's got a great voice. Like playing a teenager in a cartoon, she'd be perfect. Close your eyes, you'll see.
Relatedly, does the U.S. have concerns that if it doesn't take action on this issue in the next few weeks, that other countries could ban American travelers from going there if the U.S. doesn't reciprocate?
Yeah, I mean, both really good questions, Francesca. I think what's important here to note is that while there hasn't been a final decision made, how the interagency working groups are looking at this is with the objective of taking steps that will return international travel at a moment when it's appropriate. And right now, we're not at that point because of the rise of the Delta variant. But we want to have a process in place that's prepared for when we hit that moment.
And then the Lambda variant will be here.
And whatever the decision is made about what that will look like, we want it to be clear. We don't want it to be conflicting or confusing, and we want it to be equitable. So yes, there are a range of options. I'm not going to outline those from here, and certainly the one that has been reported on is strongly under consideration.
Okay, and on the topic of immigration, is the White House looking at action to help so-called documented dreamers? These are largely kids whose parents are here on H-1 visas.
Yeah.
They have waited for so long for green cards that the children are about to age out of the system and might have to return to their home country. So is the White House looking at any action on that issue?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think Lala asked something similar the other day. And yes, this is a part of what the president has proposed addressing in a comprehensive immigration bill. It is.
Oh, well, that's news. Yeah, so the dreamers, you have to be a certain age to be a dreamer under the DACA program, but kids get older. And if they're not part of that program because their parents are actually here legally under an H-1 visa and they age out, they got to go home. They got to go, well, actually, here's their home. But they could have been here for years. They want their American citizenship. They want to be part of the DACA program, whatever. So that's being addressed. I had never actually thought about that before. But for a while, I was in that situation. So that's kind of cool.
Is certainly something he'd want to address and supports taking action on.
But not something necessarily that would show up in the reconciliation or upcoming budget bill.
It's not in the current, I think it's not in the current discussions, but it is something the president would like to address. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, Jen. For those,
I'll go to you next. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, for those foreign visitors who are anticipating vaccination proof to come into the United States, if they've had the Chinese or Russian vaccines, should they be confident that those would be accepted, or should they go get another vaccine if it's available?
It's a really great question. We're just not at the point where the process has concluded. When it concludes, we will provide more details.
It's a really good question.
To everyone about what they would need to expect and what they would require and what they would need. I will also note that you've asked me repeatedly a very good question about American citizens who are overseas. You may have received an answer from the State Department, but just in case, to confirm for you, we don't provide direct medical care to private U.S. citizens abroad from the Department of State, as I think most of you who have covered the State Department are well aware. But we do work with countries that have a robust vaccination program to ensure that all residents, including U.S. citizens, can receive vaccinations. And we also work to ensure that U.S. citizens overseas who travel back to the United States can be can vaccinated easily and effectively. And of course, we provide all consular assistance to U.S. citizens in need overseas, and this includes providing U.S. citizens with clear information regarding eligibility to receive a vaccination in a foreign country, if it's confusing or they're not sure where to go or what their eligibility is, providing repatriation loans to assist destitute U.S. citizens with travel back to the United States, and helping them review country-specific data. Why don't you go ahead?
Secretary Cardona talked a lot about vaccinating students. What about vaccinations for teachers? Has the administration thought about this, especially for teachers who teach students who are too young to be vaccinated?
Well, we know that 90%, it's probably higher now, of teachers, I should say, across the country are vaccinated. So it certainly has moved in the right direction. And that's something school districts may make decisions about as it relates to mitigation measures. But that wouldn't be something I would expect from the federal government. It would be something school districts would determine. But again, 90% of teachers as of a week or so ago were vaccinated, which we think is in part because they were prioritized from the beginning and because it has been emphasized by the administration in part. Go ahead, Katie.
Thanks. Governor Abbott of Texas is convening another special session in effort to pass that much debated election legislation there. He has also said that the White House has passed objections to this legislation amounts to disinformation. So what is the administration's response to that?
Look, our fundamental view is that if you are pushing for legislation that makes it harder and not easier to vote, that makes it less accessible, that limits the ability of people to get to the polls, to take time off to do that, then our question is, what are you afraid of here? Are you afraid of more people getting out to vote, or what's the concern? So again, our view is that we need federal legislation, of course, passed to protect people's voting rights across the country. There's ongoing discussions about that. The president would love to sign federal legislation into law.
And does the president think Texas Democrats should stay in town this time?
Well, certainly the president believes that, one, they've been outspoken advocates and champions of voting rights, and I can't say I'm exactly following too closely the legislative calendar there, but certainly if it required them to be there, we would support that. Go ahead.
Two questions. First, on COVID and vaccines, working to reach out to Republicans. Senator Lindsey Graham obviously tested positive for COVID and spoke out about the importance of the vaccine. Does the president have any plans to try to elevate the voices of Republicans like Senator Graham? Or there was a representative from South Carolina today who announced he tested positive. Also, a Republican said he was vaccinated. You know, there obviously a large swath of the country that is not vaccinated. That's been a problem in conservative areas. Does the president or the administration have any more efforts to try to elevate those voices?
Well, first I would say the majority of Republican governors also are doing exactly the right thing in their states. I mean, we talked about Asa Hutchinson earlier. There are a number of governors across the country who are either working with the federal government on resources we can provide, encouraging vaccination, encouraging masking. This is not political to us, nor should it be political. And certainly, Senator Graham has a constituency, and we think it's great that he's out there talking about the impact of the vaccine, even while we wish.
A little bit of audio difficulty here with the transmission. I don't know if it's, I was just adjusting the audio so I can wear my little headphones and talk through the microphone on the laptop. So I don't know if I just made that happen. So if you're having difficulty hearing, I apologize. They sound like robots right now, but I think that's coming in through the feed. I don't think that's me.
Him a speedy recovery. I will note that what we've seen in poll after poll is that the most trusted voices are people in communities, not necessarily elected officials. So it's a net positive for elected officials to be out there talking about the efficacy of the vaccine, the fact that they're vaccinated, how it's. I know Senator Graham talked about how it protected him from more severe.
Are you guys here? Are you guys hearing the audio coming through like a robot, or is it just this because am I the only one hearing that in my headphones because of Bluetooth?
Symptoms from COVID, but we're still going to focus our emphasis and our efforts on local voices and local trusted leaders in communities, because that's what we've seen is most effective.
Today, Dr. Fauci talked about Operation Warp Speed, giving credit specifically to Alex Azar and his work. Any more effort to try to get the former president to speak out on this issue? People have said, Trump officials said that he deserves some more credit, and if Biden did give him that, that could potentially help get more people vaccinated.
Well, I would just first say that the president not only talked about the role of the last administration in getting the vaccine approved during the transition, but he talked about it just last week. So I wouldn't say we're shying away from talking about the fact that it was a vaccine that was approved during some of the vaccines, I should say, approved during a Republican administration, and the implementation and effort to get it in the arms of people during a Democratic administration. The former president has said he got the vaccine. He said it was people should get it, and if he wants to do that more, then good for him. That's good. Okay, go ahead.
On the requirement that federal employees be vaccinated or get tested.
The correct response there should have been, we would love it if he would tell his followers to get vaccinated on a more robust way, and we would be happy to cooperate in producing a commercial and airing the commercial and getting it out there, because his followers tend to have a lot of vaccine hesitancy. So we would love that. So good for him. Good on him. Bless his heart.
Is there an estimate of the cost of this testing to the federal agencies, and will the administration commit to once?
Okay, the audio there is really messed up for me. Is it just my headphones? Is that what's going on? It still sounds fine for you guys?
The testing starts, making public how much that is costing.
Well, it's agency by agency, and obviously we're less than a full work week in here, so they're going to be, different agencies are going to be accounting for it different ways, but I certainly think it's going to be covered by existing funds and existing budgets of each agency, but it's not one federal pot.
But can we get a counting of how much that is costing?
I can certainly check and see, but it's existing funding. So, as people put out their budgets or spending, I'm sure it would be accounted for in terms of how we're planning for and protecting people from COVID. And obviously, funding to cover your testing is included in some of this as well. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Tam.
Oh, sorry, I can't see. On the international travel working groups, do you have any sort of a time frame on when their work would be completed, regardless of whether,
like when the policy would be concluded?
Yeah, when the policy would be concluded. I know you can't tell us when Delta's going to go away.
Well, I mean, our goal is to have the policy ready when we're safe to reopen to travel. So it's hard to determine what that looks like. We'll have a better estimate as we see what's happening in our country and around the world. There are active, ongoing interagency discussions, but I don't have an estimate on when it will be formally concluded.
And on the Delta variant and breakthrough infections, there have been more and more sort of anecdotal cases of breakthrough infections, famous people like Lindsey Graham getting breakthrough infections. Has the administration thought about or reconsidered the way it talks about the incidence of breakthrough infections, how rare they are, what they look like? Is there any consideration of acknowledging in a more fulsome way that yes, these are kind of happening on a semi-regular basis?
We have said that. They are happening. I think the most important thing, though, is that vaccines are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is protecting people, the vast majority of people, from severe illness, from hospitalization. And there's data that's come out in a number of the states that have been hardest hit even in the last couple of weeks. Almost 100% of the new hospitalizations in Alabama are with unvaccinated folks. In Florida, officials have said that more than 95% of those hospitalized were not vaccinated. In Ohio, 99% of Ohio COVID-19 deaths, hospitalizations in 2021 were unvaccinated. So our objective is to project to people very clearly how vaccines can save your life. It doesn't mean that every person who has a vaccine will not test positive for COVID. We know there are breakthrough cases around the country. As more people get vaccinated, there will be more, just as a percentage, just by numbers. We certainly acknowledge that, but I think it's also important for people to understand the benefit of vaccination, which is that it can save your life, it can prevent you from going to the hospital, and that's where we're trying to alleviate confusion.
Jen, I'm told that you have an out. Do you have time for one more?
Sure. Okay. Why don't we go to you in the back? Oh, hello, Nadia. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Is the White House worried about the threat and counter-threat between Israel and Iran and the high rhetoric with the threat of the Israelis launching a military strike against Iran?
Well, of course, Israel, as a sovereign country, has the right to defend itself, and we certainly recognize that first and foremost. We, of course, are working with the international community and have concerns about the escalating activity we've seen as it relates to the seized tanker, the Asphalt Princess, also the Mercer Street attack. And these are all certainly issues that are of concern to us and of concern to the international community. We feel it follows a pattern of attacks and other belligerent behavior, and these actions also threaten freedom of navigation through crucial waterways, something that is posing a risk to a range of countries around the world. I would also note that we know our British partners have called for action, called for steps in a coordinated way from international bodies, including the United Nations, which we would certainly support. Thanks so much, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Okay, and thank you so much, everybody. I have been your Kevinly father, Kevin Williams. This has been, we'll call it Facts and Friends today, because we covered a couple of press conferences. Man, that is a binder. Look at that. We used to make fun of Kelly Macaroni for having her binder, but it was also full of nonsense, whereas this is full of actual facts. In Ohio, 99% of deaths since the beginning of the year due to COVID were from the unvaccinated. Facts. I love it. It's so different. So very, very different. A little bit of credit given to the Trump administration in that, as well as Fauci this morning, giving credit to Trump. So it looks like they're trying to get to the root causes of why people are vaccine hesitant. I have not seen the administration yet, although it wouldn't have been targeted to me, addressing the vaccine hesitancy amongst the African American community and amongst the Hispanic community. Two huge issues, especially amongst the African American community. Right now, vaccination rates, fully vaccinated rate in the African American community nationwide is about 25%. So 3 out of 4 African Americans are vaccine hesitant at this point or haven't had access to the vaccine. Which is totally understandable from a historical perspective. This country has used African Americans as guinea pigs time and time and time again. And so I completely understand the lack of trust in the system. Hopefully the FDA announcing that it is fully approved. And at this point, honestly, it's the vaccine's approved. It's just the manufacturing process that is being evaluated. There's a time frame on that. And that time frame has to be adhered to. So hopefully that will boost that up. Arkansas has been putting out some interesting commercials. Look for Arkansas vaccine commercial on Twitter, and you'll see it. And the Black Twitter finds it absolutely hilarious. The commercials that Arkansas is putting out, but at this point, they're trying anything to get those rates of vaccinated African Americans higher. Not only are vaccines among African Americans lower than the equivalent populations of other races, but as well, they tend to, tend to is not really the right word, they suffer a greater percentage of the consequences of COVID-19 as well. Disproportionately, they are hospitalized. Disproportionately, they suffer from death from COVID-19. So it's really important that somebody figure out a way to convince more people to get it. And so far, no one's done that. So if you have any ideas, feel free to reach out. Okay, so guys, this is the end of the broadcast. Probably not going to be back today. We might. I've got some more memory for Marcy's donated laptop coming in. The fact that we're even broadcasting at all, and I think it's working wonderfully. Better for you guys, ironically, because you guys can apparently hear better than I can. Nothing to do with the laptop. It's the Bluetooth connection. I got a big memory stick coming in later today from the Amazons, so that will also boost my productivity as well. I got this magic little cable that takes the USB-C port and turns it into an HDMI port. So I'll be able to put up my third monitor here, the laptop screen, one monitor, and on the other side, a third monitor, so I'll be more productive theoretically. I mean, any productivity coming out of me is more productive, right? So maybe we'll see you later today. It's just me and Pembroke here at Pembroke Studios, and Pembroke's a cat who's been hiding from me for 3 days. So there's not a lot of interaction for me here. We'll put that together, and we might come back later and watch Hannity or something. Anyway, thanks for joining me. If you'd like to support this effort, donate another laptop. Actually, I've already got a great laptop, so don't. I think Marcy's already taken care of everything. But if you'd like to send funding, become a patron. Go to PayPal, go to the Cash App, send me Venmo. It's Kevin-Williams-157 on Venmo. I got to put a QR code up there as well. I got so much stuff to do. I got to rebuild the whole software system on the laptop. I'm sure there's a way to make that faster, but I haven't figured it out yet. This is all a matter of time. Speaking of time, have yourself a great time. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and most importantly, become a patron and be good to me.